10 signs you should cut ties, even with family or friends. Stoicism. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor. Seneca. Have you ever felt weighed down by certain people in your life, as if their presence pulls you back instead of lifting you forward? Stoic philosophy teaches us that not everyone deserves a place in your journey, and sometimes letting go, yes, even of family or close friends, might be the wisest and most liberating choice you can make. Why? Because clinging to toxic relationships, no matter how deep the ties, only holds you back. If you've ever had that nagging feeling that something isn't right, that certain people no longer add value to your life, it might be time to reevaluate. In this video, Stoic in Your Life brings you 10 signs you should cut ties, even with family or friends. Clear, actionable insights grounded in Stoic wisdom. The last one is a revelation you won't want to miss. Before we dive in, let me share a story that perfectly illustrates the strength and peace that comes from making this hard but vital decision. Let's begin. Once, in a tranquil valley, there was a young woman named Helena who lovingly tended to her magnificent garden. It was her pride and joy, bursting with vibrant flowers and sweet fruits, a testament to her care and devotion. Yet, like all things in life, it demanded constant attention to thrive. One day she noticed something troubling. A cherished plant she had nurtured with all her heart was beginning to wither, despite her best efforts. She watered it, gave it the richest soil, yet its vitality waned. Determined to save it, Helena dug around the roots, only to discover they were entangled with an invasive plant greedily siphoning away all the nutrients. Helena faced a tough choice. She could continue battling the invader, risking the health of her entire garden, or take a more decisive approach. With a heavy heart, she removed the invasive plant, even though she knew it meant sacrificing some roots of her beloved plant in the process. To her relief, the garden flourished once more. The flowers regained their brilliance, and the fruits became abundant again. Reflecting on her decision, Helena understood its necessity, remarking to her friends, "Life is like this garden. Sometimes we have relationships that, like invasive plants, drain our energy and stifle our growth. It may hurt to let go, but doing so is often essential to protect our peace and allow ourselves to truly flourish." This story offers a profound metaphor for life. It teaches us that while it can be deeply painful to cut ties with people we care about, our personal growth and well-being sometimes demand it. Relationships, whether familial, friendly, or romantic, can either nurture us like fertile soil or deplete us like a parasite. In modern life, the concept of cutting ties is often clouded with guilt, especially when it involves family or close friends. We're conditioned to believe that loyalty, no matter how draining, is a virtue. But is it virtuous to sacrifice your peace, growth, or even mental health to maintain a toxic connection? Consider this. A friendship or relationship should feel like sunlight on a plant, fostering life and health. If instead it feels like a shadow, stunting your growth, it's time to reassess. Seneca reminds us, associate with people who are likely to improve you. The people in our lives should inspire us, not inhibit us. Every decision to cut ties begins with recognizing the signs. These signs are like the wilting leaves in Helena's garden, subtle at first but unmistakable if you pay attention. Perhaps you've noticed that someone continually dismisses your feelings, demands more than they give, or brings constant negativity into your life. Even family, bound to us by blood but not always by mutual respect, can be the source of such toxicity. As Epictetus wisely stated, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. This means being prepared to make decisions others might not understand but are crucial for your own improvement. Letting go isn't an act of cruelty but one of wisdom. It's an acknowledgement that your energy and time are finite and must be directed toward relationships that help you grow, not wither. In a fast-paced, ever-demanding world, it's easy to overlook the emotional costs of holding on to relationships that no longer serve you. Yet by releasing those that drain us, we create space for connections that uplift and nourish our spirit. This doesn't mean cutting ties is easy. Far from it. It requires clarity, resilience, and often a period of mourning. But as the Stoics remind us, the goal of life isn't to avoid pain but to use it as a teacher. Pain, after all, often signals where growth is needed. As we reflect on this wisdom, consider your own garden. Are there relationships you've been watering despite their invasiveness? Are you holding on to someone out of habit, guilt, or fear of change? These are tough questions, but the answers can set you free. Take heart in knowing that by prioritizing your well-being, you're not only enriching your own life but also setting an example for others. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus encouraged, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. This journey isn't about severing ties recklessly or without compassion. It's about making thoughtful, deliberate choices that align with your values and foster your growth. Each step you take toward clarity and peace is a step toward flourishing, much like Helena's garden. Remember, the process might hurt, but it will also heal. And as you let go of the invasive elements, your life, like the garden, will bloom anew, full of vibrant possibilities and lasting peace. So, as we begin, ask yourself, what in your life needs tending, and what might need letting go? Let this video be the guide to help you find those answers. 1. When good intentions become manipulations. Sometimes the most well-intentioned actions can mask a deeper issue: manipulation. It begins subtly, often wrapped in the warm guise of care and concern. Someone in your life, perhaps a family member or a close friend, might insist that everything they do is for your own good. At first you might believe them. After all, who wouldn't want the best for you? But over time, the cracks begin to show. Behind their seemingly selfless acts lies an attempt to control, to dictate how you should live, and to mold your decisions to align with their version of what's best. As Epictetus wisely stated, when someone tries to dominate you with affection, they are really asking you to give up your freedom. The signs of manipulation often start small, like whispers carried on the wind, barely noticeable. They might assure you of their love while subtly implying that your choices are inadequate or misguided. Gradually, guilt starts to seep in, an unwelcome shadow that lingers after every interaction. You may find yourself questioning your own judgment, feeling as though every decision you make must align with their expectations or else you risk disappointing them. Their words, which initially felt comforting, begin to feel like shackles. I just want what's best for you, they say. But what they really mean is, I want you to do what I think is best. This type of relationship can leave you feeling trapped, as though your autonomy and sense of self are slipping away piece by piece. Recognizing this pattern is the first step toward reclaiming your peace. True love, whether it's from family, friends, or a partner, does not seek to control. It seeks to liberate. A healthy relationship is one that allows you to grow freely, even if that growth takes you on a path they might not fully understand. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane. Insisting on your independence, even in the face of guilt or opposition, is not an act of defiance. It's an act of self-respect. Cutting ties with such individuals doesn't mean you cease to care about them. It means prioritizing your well-being and recognizing that their actions, however well-meaning they may seem, are hindering your growth. It's important to remember that stepping away doesn't make you a bad person. On the contrary, it makes you someone who understands their boundaries and values their emotional health. You're not abandoning them out of spite, but choosing to protect the balance in your life. As Seneca so aptly puts it, associate with people who are likely to improve you. Surrounding yourself with those who encourage your growth rather than stifle it is essential for a fulfilling life. In modern life, manipulation often masquerades as love or care, making it even harder to identify and address. Consider how social expectations, especially for men aged 40 to 70, often emphasize loyalty and responsibility to family and long-standing relationships. While these values are admirable, they can also become traps if they force you to tolerate toxic behavior. If someone continually imposes their will on you, subtly or overtly, it's worth asking, is this relationship nurturing or draining me? The answer is often clear when you listen to your inner voice, that quiet but persistent guide that knows when something isn't right. Taking action to distance yourself from such relationships is a courageous step, one that requires both clarity and strength. This doesn't mean cutting ties harshly or without compassion. It means setting boundaries that protect your freedom and emotional well-being. These boundaries are acts of self-care, and they communicate to others that your life is your own to lead. As you do this, you might encounter resistance or even backlash, but remember, your peace is worth more than their expectations. As the Stoics teach us, the ultimate goal is not to please others, but to live in alignment with your true self. By prioritizing your freedom and refusing to be bound by guilt or manipulation, you open the door to healthier, more fulfilling connections. The people who truly care about you will respect your autonomy and celebrate your growth, even if it diverges from their expectations. And for those who cannot accept your boundaries, it's a sign that their presence in your life might no longer serve you. Remember Helena's garden? Sometimes you must remove the invasive roots to let the rest of the garden thrive. While this may be painful in the moment, it ultimately allows your life to bloom with greater vitality and joy. Take heart in knowing that by setting boundaries and making tough decisions, you are not only choosing a healthier path for yourself, but also setting a precedent for those around you. As you move forward, remember this truth from Epictetus. Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. Your life, your peace, and your freedom are yours to protect. Let nothing stand in the way of your growth. 2. The current situation. Have you ever walked away from a conversation or interaction feeling completely drained, as if all the energy you carried into that moment had evaporated? This isn't some mysterious phenomenon or a figment of your imagination. It's emotional exhaustion, and it often comes from the people you expect the most from, family or close friends. These are the relationships that should uplift and support you, yet somehow, they end up draining you like a sponge soaking up water from a drying well. It's a subtle, creeping experience that starts small, with unnoticed comments or constant demands, but grows into a pattern that leaves you feeling depleted after every interaction. Let's take a moment to reflect on the signs of emotional exhaustion in your relationships. Do you feel like no matter how much you give, it's never enough? Are you constantly on edge, as if every conversation is a battle where you need to defend your choices or feelings? When you're surrounded by people who critique, manipulate, or simply ignore your boundaries, it's like plugging your phone into a faulty charger. The device works over time, yet the battery remains empty. Over time, you end up emotionally drained, wondering how you reached such a low point. Emotional exhaustion is not an excuse to avoid people. It's a signal, a flashing red light telling you that something in the relationship isn't working. Relationships should nurture, not deplete your energy. One major red flag is the constant need to defend yourself. When every interaction feels like a war zone instead of a space of trust, it's time to ask, is this relationship building me up or tearing me down? Healthy connections are like a sanctuary. They allow you to be yourself without fear of criticism or judgment. But when someone trivializes your feelings or consistently ignores your needs, the relationship becomes a battlefield. Seneca once said, "The greatest blessings of mankind are within us and within our reach. A wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be." If a relationship forces you to abandon your inner peace, it may no longer serve you. Another clear sign of emotional exhaustion is the inability to say no. If expressing your own boundaries or needs leads to anger, manipulation, or guilt from the other person, something is seriously wrong. Relationships built on mutual respect should allow room for you to decline without fear of repercussions. When guilt or fear replaces your ability to set limits, the relationship shifts from partnership to emotional servitude. The Stoics teach us that boundaries are not selfish but necessary. As Epictetus advised, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. Without boundaries, your freedom to live authentically diminishes. One of the most toxic disguises of emotional exhaustion is guilt. You might feel that no matter what you do, you're falling short. Not giving enough, not being present enough, not doing enough to maintain the relationship. But guilt isn't a healthy motivator. It's a tool that keeps you stuck in cycles of self-doubt and overextension. If someone constantly uses guilt to keep you engaged or compliant, it's time to reevaluate the dynamic. Remember, true relationships uplift and empower. They don't drain you emotionally or leave you questioning your worth. The Stoics offer a valuable perspective on this issue. Your emotional well-being is within your control, but only if you recognize the power you have over your responses and boundaries. Emotional exhaustion isn't just about what others do to you. It's also about how you allow their actions to impact you. The solution lies in learning to set limits, not out of cruelty or selfishness, but out of a deep sense of self-respect. Saying, "This relationship no longer adds value to my life," is not an act of unkindness, it's an act of self-care. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, "Dwell on the beauty of life, watch the stars and see yourself running with them." Your focus should be on nurturing your own well-being so you can flourish. Sometimes setting boundaries means distancing yourself emotionally or even cutting ties entirely. This can be especially painful when it involves family or lifelong friends, but it's necessary for your health and happiness. Emotional exhaustion isn't just an inconvenience. It's a slow drain that saps your energy and prevents you from giving your best to the relationships that truly matter. If a relationship consistently leaves you feeling worse rather than better, it's time to take action. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and if you're emotionally depleted, even the most meaningful connections in your life will suffer. So, how do you take that step? First, identify the sources of emotional exhaustion in your life. Who consistently leaves you feeling drained? Next, evaluate whether these relationships can be adjusted with clear boundaries, or if they need to be let go entirely. This isn't about burning bridges recklessly. It's about carefully choosing what and who you allow into your emotional space. As Seneca so wisely put it, associate with people who are likely to improve you. By surrounding yourself with uplifting, respectful relationships, you create a fertile ground for your own growth and peace. Remember, no one has the right to compromise your emotional well-being, no matter how close the relationship may be. Taking a step back, or even walking away, doesn't mean you don't care. It means you value yourself enough to protect your peace. Emotional exhaustion is a wake-up call, not a life sentence. You have the power to reclaim your energy, your boundaries, and your sense of self. As you navigate these decisions, hold on to the wisdom of the Stoics. Focus on what you can control, and let go of what you cannot. At the end of the day, your emotional health is your responsibility, and no one else has the right to dictate it. 3. Mutual respect. Respect. It's a word we hear often, so often in fact, that its meaning can sometimes feel diluted. Yet, respect is the foundation of every healthy relationship. It's the glue that holds trust, understanding, and dignity together. Respect is not merely about polite courtesies like please and thank you, though those have their place. True respect is deeper. It's about recognizing the other person as your equal, honoring their feelings, boundaries, and rights. It's about treating them as you would wish to be treated, especially when life throws challenges your way. As Epictetus reminds us, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. Respect starts with listening and truly valuing the other person's voice. Respect doesn't mean tolerating abuse, manipulation, or neglect. It's not about staying silent when you're being mistreated. Respect is a two-way street, and when one side falters, the relationship begins to crumble. Have you ever felt invisible in a conversation, like your words didn't matter, or worse, like they weren't even heard? That's one of the first signs that respect has taken a back seat. When your ideas, emotions, or boundaries are consistently dismissed or ignored, it's not just disrespectful. It's a sign that the relationship is no longer built on equality. Criticism, too, is a double-edged sword. Constructive criticism, when given with care, helps us grow. But constant, demeaning criticism erodes respect and leaves behind bitterness. If someone in your life feels entitled to ridicule your choices, question your values, or belittle your interests, they're not honoring who you are. It's not a sign of love or concern. It's a power play. And when manipulation enters the picture, where guilt and emotional games are used to control or coerce, the foundation of respect is shattered. As Seneca said, you must live for yourself and think for yourself, while others do the same. Manipulation is the opposite of respect because it denies you your agency and autonomy. Boundaries are another key indicator of respect. Healthy relationships honor boundaries. They don't push, invade, or dismiss them. Have you noticed yourself tolerating behaviors or situations you once would never have allowed? Perhaps someone in your life has encroached on your time, your space, or your mental peace, and you've allowed it to continue for the sake of keeping the peace. But boundaries are not negotiable. They are the framework within which respect thrives. If someone disregards your limits, they are not respecting you. As the Stoics taught, what upsets people is not things themselves, but their judgments about these things. Your judgment about what you allow in your life is the ultimate decider of whether respect remains intact. Silence, too, can speak volumes. When used constructively, silence is a powerful tool for reflection and understanding. But when used as a weapon, giving the cold shoulder, ignoring, or stonewalling, it becomes a form of emotional abuse. Healthy communication is the lifeblood of any relationship, and silence, when wielded to punish or control, kills that connection. If you find yourself on the receiving end of this weaponized silence, it's a glaring sign that respect has left the room. As Marcus Aurelius emphasized, be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. This means setting high standards for how you treat others, but not allowing their mistreatment to dictate your peace. Recognizing these signs is one thing, but acting on them is another. It can feel daunting, even impossible, to address the lack of respect in a relationship, especially when it involves someone close, a friend, a family member, or a longtime partner. But the Stoics teach us to focus on what we can control. You cannot change another person's behavior, but you can change how you respond to it. If respect is missing, start by having an honest conversation. Express how you feel, set clear boundaries, and communicate what you need moving forward. If these efforts are met with more disrespect or indifference, it might be time to consider letting go. As hard as it is, walking away from a toxic relationship isn't about abandoning the other person. It's about choosing to honor yourself. Cutting ties is never easy, especially when societal expectations or familial obligations weigh heavily on your shoulders. But remember this, you don't owe anyone your peace. Your emotional well-being is not a sacrifice you're required to make to maintain a relationship. Marcus Aurelius captured this truth when he wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If a relationship darkens your thoughts and drains your spirit, it's better to step away than to stay in the shadow of disrespect. Respect is not just a word. It's the foundation of every meaningful connection. Without it, even the strongest bonds will eventually weaken. If you find that respect has been replaced by criticism, manipulation, or neglect, it's time to act. Speak up, set limits, and if needed, walk away. Remember, as the Stoics taught, your peace and dignity are worth more than any toxic connection. It's not about saving a relationship at all costs. It's about saving yourself. Respect, when mutual, can build bridges and foster growth. But when lost, It's a signal to reassess and possibly let go. As Marcus Aurelius said, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Choose to be the person who values respect, both in giving it and demanding it in return. Let this choice guide your actions and restore your peace. 4. Broken promises. Promises. Those lovely shimmering words that sound like music when spoken with conviction. But let me ask you, what happens when those promises become nothing more than an empty tune, repeated over and over like the relentless buzz of a morning alarm? Do you find yourself holding on to the hope that this time, just maybe, it will be different? If so, you're not alone. Many of us have been there, listening to the same assurances, only to see them dissolve into disappointment. The truth is, promises are like candy, sweet and enticing at first, but if you're offered the same treat over and over without ever tasting it, it eventually loses its appeal. Yet here we are, waiting, hoping, believing that the next time will be the time. But deep down, you already know the truth. Broken promises aren't just harmless words. They are cracks in the foundation of trust. They drain your energy, erode your confidence, and leave you wondering if you're the one to blame for expecting too much. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, once said, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth." And the truth here is that waiting for others to fulfill their empty promises is an exercise in futility. Broken promises become a cycle, a routine that eats away at your emotional well-being. Think about the people who keep making these promises. Are they family, friends, people you once trusted deeply? Each broken promise is more than just a failed commitment. It's a moment where your trust is taken for granted, leaving you to pick up the emotional pieces. You might tell yourself that they mean well, that this time will be different. The Stoics remind us to focus on what we can control, and you cannot control whether others keep their promises. What you can control is how you respond to them. Every unfulfilled promise sends a subtle message. Your time, your emotions, your trust don't matter enough. It's like lending someone your favorite book, only for them to return it torn and unread. How many times can you let this happen before realizing that the problem isn't just them? It's also your willingness to allow it. Seneca reminds us, "He who is brave is free." And bravery here means being courageous enough to break free from the cycle of disappointment. If someone's promises continually go unfulfilled, it's not just a flaw in their character, it's a pattern you no longer have to endure. You might feel that cutting ties is too drastic, especially when it involves family or close friends. But is it really more drastic than living in constant frustration, waiting for something that will never come? Cutting ties doesn't mean severing every relationship with a machete. It means recognizing when a relationship no longer serves your growth and making the hard but necessary choice to step back. You have to ask yourself, is this relationship giving me more frustration than fulfillment? If the answer is yes, it's time to reassess. Epictetus famously said, "We suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgments about them." Don't judge yourself harshly for choosing peace over empty promises. To break free from this cycle, start by setting clear boundaries. It doesn't matter who the person is, a parent, a sibling, a best friend. If they repeatedly break their word, you have the right to protect yourself. Let them know that you're no longer willing to invest your trust in promises they don't keep. This isn't about punishing them. It's about valuing yourself enough to demand honesty and respect. When you set these boundaries, you'll be surprised at how liberating it feels. The weight of unfulfilled expectations lifts, and you're left with the energy to focus on relationships that truly enrich your life. Next, take ownership of your emotional well-being. Stop waiting for others to make you feel valued or whole. True freedom comes from within, and the Stoics were clear on this point. Your emotions are yours to control. By taking responsibility for your emotional health, you shift the focus from what others fail to do to what you can do to protect your peace. Remember, Trusting someone who consistently lets you down isn't loyalty, it's self-neglect. Finally, release the guilt that often comes with letting go of toxic relationships. You don't owe anyone your trust, especially if they've proven unworthy of it. Holding on to the hope that they'll change or fulfill their promises isn't kindness. It's a slow, painful drain on your spirit. By letting go, you're not abandoning them. You're choosing to prioritize your well-being. As the Stoics teach, peace begins when we stop expecting things to be different than they are. If someone shows you who they are through repeated actions, believe them and act accordingly. The peace you seek starts with recognizing what no longer serves you and making the brave choice to let it go. As you reflect on these questions, remember the Stoic wisdom that has guided countless others. The tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think, or do. Only what you do. Take back control, honor your boundaries, and reclaim the trust you deserve. The rest will follow. You've reached the end of this journey, but the real transformation starts now. Comment, I choose clarity if you're ready to take control of your relationships and embrace a life of peace. Don't go anywhere. More life-changing lessons are just around the corner. 5. The toxic silence. That kind of silence that settles in a relationship like an unspoken elephant in the room, impossible to ignore but equally hard to address. In relationships, whether with family, friends, or partners, silence can be far more toxic than any argument or shouted insult. It doesn't always arrive with a bang. Often it creeps in slowly, replacing meaningful conversations with an empty void. And when silence takes the place of dialogue, it's often a sign that something is broken. This silence isn't always about avoiding conflict. It can also mean that one person has stopped caring altogether. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us in Meditations, the best way to avenge yourself is not to become like them. In this context, choosing peace over staying in a toxic silence is not only wise but necessary. Toxic silence isn't just the absence of words, it's the absence of effort, the absence of care. It's not the silence of reflection or peaceful understanding, but a wall of indifference that blocks connection. Think about a time when someone's silence spoke louder than words ever could. Did it make you feel valued, or did it leave you questioning your worth in their life? When silence becomes a barrier rather than a bridge, it's like a time bomb, quiet on the surface but ticking away, ready to explode into resentment, discomfort, and, perhaps worst of all, indifference. This kind of silence often masks deeper issues, such as unresolved anger, unspoken disappointments, or a loss of interest in maintaining the relationship. Have you noticed conversations growing shorter, laughter becoming rare, or moments of understanding replaced with tension? These are signs that the relationship is slipping away. If you find yourself staying silent because it's easier than expressing your feelings, or worse, because you know your words will be ignored or dismissed, it's time to take a closer look. Healthy relationships thrive on communication, and when communication becomes non-existent, the relationship starts to wither. As Seneca once said, "What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears." While we can't change the inevitabilities of life, we can choose not to prolong unnecessary suffering caused by toxic relationships. What makes toxic silence even more damaging is when it becomes a tool of manipulation. This isn't the silence of someone taking time to process their thoughts. It's the silence used as punishment. The silent treatment is a form of control designed to make you feel guilty, uncertain, or desperate for approval. It's not about seeking peace. It's about wielding power. This kind of behavior creates an atmosphere of emotional instability, where one person feels constantly on edge, trying to guess what the other is thinking or feeling. It's the antithesis of empathy and connection. When silence is weaponized in this way, it's not just a sign of disconnection. It's a signal that the relationship has turned toxic. Avoiding important conversations doesn't make the underlying issues go away. If anything, it exacerbates them. Unspoken words fester, creating emotional wounds that only deepen over time. Just like physical wounds can't heal if ignored, the fractures in a relationship can't mend without honest communication. Epictetus taught us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. In this case, reacting means choosing to protect your peace over enduring the weight of silence that serves no purpose. It's important to understand that cutting ties doesn't have to be harsh or spiteful. It's not about shutting people out of your life impulsively, but about recognizing when a relationship has reached a point where it drains more than it nourishes. Silence can be a healthy tool for reflection and self-awareness, but when it becomes a refuge for indifference or manipulation, it's time to question its role in your life. Don't let fear or guilt hold you back from setting boundaries. Letting go of a toxic relationship isn't about giving up. It's about making space for connections that are authentic and uplifting. The Stoics remind us that life is too short to waste on relationships that only bring discomfort and pain. If you find yourself trapped in a toxic silence, take action. Start by addressing the issue directly. Sometimes the other person may not even realize the impact their silence is having, and opening a dialogue can create a path to resolution. But if they're unwilling to engage or change, it's okay to walk away. Cutting ties is not a failure. It's an act of courage. Of course, not all silence is harmful. In moments of reflection or shared tranquility, silence can be a source of strength and understanding. But when silence becomes a pattern of avoidance or a weapon of control, it's a sign that the relationship has lost its foundation. Relationships should be spaces where you feel heard, valued, and understood, not places where silence screams louder than words. Don't let the weight of toxic silence keep you from living fully. Life is far too short to spend it waiting for someone to break a silence that no longer serves either of you. As you reflect on your relationships, ask yourself this: does the silence in your connection feel like peace, or does it feel like avoidance? If it's the latter, it might be time to make a change. Letting go isn't about blaming or resenting. It's about choosing to prioritize your own mental and emotional health. Remember the wisdom of Seneca. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Don't waste another moment trapped in the echo of silence that doesn't serve you. Take control, set boundaries, and create the space for relationships that truly enrich your life. In the end, it's not about filling the silence with noise, but about finding the harmony that comes from meaningful connection and mutual respect. 6. Is it love or just habit? It's strange, isn't it, how everything in life can eventually turn into a habit, even love, that ethereal and sublime concept we all search for. What begins as passion and connection can, over time, settle into routine, so subtle that you hardly notice it happening. Have you ever thought about how something you once cherished might have become nothing more than a habit? It's like that old favorite t-shirt you can't stop wearing. At first, it fit perfectly, made you feel great, and you adored it. But now it's worn out, doesn't fit quite right, and yet you still hold on to it. Why? Because it's comfortable, familiar. But what if we're doing the same with people? What if the love you think you're holding on to is nothing more than a routine, an old habit you're afraid to break? The Stoics understood love not as fleeting emotion, but as something rooted in stability, mutual respect, and growth. Real love, according to their teachings, is not about clinging to comfort, but about fostering a connection that pushes you to become a better version of yourself. But this doesn't mean staying with someone just because it's what you've always done, or because it feels easier than letting go. So, how do you tell the difference? When does love become habit? And how do you know it's time to move on? Start by asking yourself, why am I still here? If the only answer you can find is familiarity, then perhaps it's time to look deeper. Love should feel like peace, like growth, not like being stuck in a loop of conflict, discomfort, or stagnation. Maybe you've noticed that being with this person feels more like an obligation than a joy. Perhaps you've started to think that being alone sounds better than spending time together. Or maybe your relationship has become a source of anxiety instead of solace. filled with endless arguments and fleeting moments of calm that only highlight how distant you've grown. The hardest realization is often that what you thought was love has morphed into habit, a routine that no longer nourishes you. And here's the crucial question. Is it love that binds you, or is it simply the fear of change? Letting go is never easy, especially when it comes to people we've built our lives around. But staying in a relationship where respect, care, and the desire to grow together have vanished isn't love, it's self-neglect. This isn't just about romantic relationships. The same applies to friendships and even family ties. Relationships that drain you emotionally, leaving you feeling emptier and more exhausted after every interaction, are a sign that it might be time to let go. Think about it like eating the same meal every day. At first, it's satisfying, even enjoyable. But over time, not only do you lose the pleasure, but it might even start to harm you. The same is true for relationships that no longer bring joy or growth. People grow, circumstances change, and what once was a genuine connection can evolve into something that no longer serves either of you. As Epictetus reminds us, he who is not satisfied with a little is satisfied with nothing. Don't cling to a relationship that leaves you feeling small out of fear of losing what you already know. True love doesn't confine or stagnate. It challenges you, supports your growth, and inspires you to become better. It doesn't demand that you stay in your comfort zone, but rather, it invites you to explore new heights together. If a relationship feels stagnant, with no room for mutual growth or improvement, it may be time to step back and evaluate if you're holding on to love or just a habit that keeps you stuck. Growth is uncomfortable, but stagnation can be stifling, and the price of staying in a comfortable routine might be the loss of your own potential. At the heart of this decision is self-honesty and the courage to confront what no longer serves you. The most important relationships in your life, including the one you have with yourself, thrive on authenticity. You can't build a fulfilling future while clinging to the past out of fear or convenience. It's not about cutting ties out of anger or resentment. It's about choosing to invest your energy into relationships and pursuits that align with your growth and happiness. As Seneca said, true happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. Staying in a relationship that only offers habit over fulfillment robs you of that happiness. Don't be afraid to let go of what no longer nurtures your spirit. Doing so isn't a failure. It's an act of self-respect and love for your own well-being. The lesson here is simple. Love isn't about clinging to what feels safe. It's about choosing what helps you flourish. Whether it's a romantic relationship, a friendship, or even a bond with family, don't confuse comfort with love. As you navigate these choices, remember that growth often begins where the habit ends. You cannot truly love what doesn't help you grow, nor can you thrive while holding on to what no longer gives you life. Choose yourself, and in doing so, open the door to relationships that truly enrich your journey. 7. Relationships that prevent you from growing. Sometimes relationships become like those old shoes you keep in the closet. They might have fit perfectly once, felt comfortable, and even carried you through some important moments. But now, they pinch, cause blisters, and slow you down. Yet, you hesitate to let them go. Why? Because you're used to them. Relationships, much like those worn-out shoes, can hold you back. They might be friends, family, or even partners who once supported you but now keep you anchored in the past, stuck in patterns that stifle your growth. It's easy to cling to people who've been part of your life for years, especially when there's a history of shared memories and moments that shaped you. But here's the reality. Just because someone has been a positive force in the past doesn't mean they continue to contribute positively to your life today. If you're honest with yourself, are these relationships lifting you up, or are they weighing you down? Are they challenging you to grow and supporting your aspirations, or are they quietly holding you in place, replaying the same arguments, the same stories, the same emotional stalemates? As Marcus Aurelius wisely put it, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one. And sometimes, being a better version of yourself means reevaluating who you surround yourself with. When relationships begin to feel more like a burden than a source of strength, the question isn't just whether you should stay, but whether you can stay and still continue to grow. Growth requires forward momentum, and relationships that keep pulling you back into old patterns can feel like chains around your ankles. Have you ever noticed how, after spending time with certain people, you feel drained, diminished, or even unsure of your worth? That's not what healthy connections are supposed to do. Healthy relationships inspire confidence, foster personal growth, and create a space where you feel valued. If someone in your life consistently makes you question your abilities or leaves you feeling stuck, it's time to examine whether that connection is still serving you. Think about those people who never let go of the past, bringing up old grievances, repeating the same conflicts, and resisting any real resolution. It's like being stuck on a hamster wheel, going through the motions but never making progress. If every interaction feels like déjà vu, where the same issues are rehashed without growth or understanding, you're not moving forward. You're stuck. And life is too short to be trapped in cycles that don't allow you to flourish. As Epictetus said, progress is not achieved by luck or accident, but by working on yourself daily. If your relationships aren't aligned with that progress, it's worth questioning their place in your life. Another telltale sign is a lack of support. Sure, disagreements are normal in any relationship, but if the people around you consistently criticize your choices or greet your efforts to improve with indifference, they might not have your best interests at heart. Real friends, real partners, and real family should push you to be your best, not drag you back into a place of insecurity or self-doubt. Worse still, are those who manipulate you emotionally, disguising control or guilt as concern or love. These dynamics are harmful, and the longer you allow them to persist, the more they eat away at your confidence and happiness. Remember, love isn't meant to feel like an obligation, and no relationship should make you feel like you're constantly apologizing for being yourself. If a relationship leaves you feeling exhausted, like you're giving more than you're receiving or constantly defending your choices, it's time to think about letting go. Letting go doesn't mean you're abandoning someone or erasing the good moments you've shared. It means recognizing that not all relationships are meant to last forever, and that's okay. As the Stoics teach, detachment is not about rejecting what you love, but understanding that clinging to something that no longer serves you only brings pain. It's not about cutting ties in anger or resentment. It's about prioritizing your emotional and mental well-being and making space for relationships that uplift and inspire you. The hardest part is often making that first move. Maybe you've convinced yourself that these relationships are part of your identity, that letting them go would leave you feeling lost. But the truth is, your growth depends on your ability to shed what no longer fits. Just as a tree sheds its leaves in autumn to make way for new growth in spring, we too must let go of what weighs us down to thrive. This doesn't require a dramatic confrontation or a grand goodbye. Sometimes all it takes is creating distance, setting boundaries, and quietly prioritizing your well-being. Over time, you'll find that the space you've created allows you to breathe, to grow, and to focus on the relationships that truly matter. As Seneca reminds us, associate with those who will make a better man of you. Surround yourself with people who encourage your ambitions, challenge you to grow, and celebrate your progress. Life is too precious to spend it in relationships that don't allow you to thrive. Ultimately, your life is yours to shape. Don't let outdated loyalties, guilt, or fear of change keep you in a place that no longer serves you. Letting go of a relationship that has run its course isn't a sign of failure. It's a courageous act of self-love and respect. When you release what no longer contributes to your growth, you make room for connections that are meaningful, inspiring, and aligned with your journey. Growth isn't always easy, and it often requires difficult choices, but those choices pave the way for a fuller, more authentic life. And isn't that what truly matters? As Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." So choose wisely, and don't let anyone or anything hold you back. 8. the constant drama. There comes a point in life when you realize that some relationships are nothing but constant drama, an endless cycle that drains every ounce of energy from you. Whether it's a friendship, a romantic partnership, or even a family tie, these connections, instead of bringing peace and joy, become emotional quicksand, pulling you deeper with every interaction. And here's the critical question: is it really worth it? The Stoics teach us that our peace of mind and emotional well-being are not dictated by others, but by our ability to recognize when to step off the stage and close the curtain on a performance that no longer serves us. As Epictetus wisely said, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. Now imagine being cast in a play. At first, the role is exciting. The applause, the anticipation, and the effort you put in all seem worth it. But over time, you realize that the character you're playing isn't you. It's who others expect you to be. The rehearsals drag on, the script becomes repetitive, and you feel utterly exhausted. Yet, you convince yourself to keep going because the show must go on, right? That's how toxic relationships work. They lure you in with promise and excitement, but slowly turn into a relentless grind where you give and give while the other person takes. And before you know it, you're stuck in a role that's draining the very essence of who you are. The signs are often subtle at first, but they're always there. Do you feel emotionally depleted after every interaction, as though you've run a marathon without moving an inch? Do you find yourself giving endlessly emotional support, time, effort, while receiving little to nothing in return? That's not balance. That's being used. And if guilt and manipulation are part of the equation, making you feel like everything is your fault or that you're somehow not enough, it's time to recognize the toxic pattern for what it is. Relationships that once seemed like love or support often devolve into emotional battlegrounds with constant ups and downs that leave you questioning your own worth. This isn't what relationships are meant to be. The Stoics understood the importance of recognizing and addressing these dynamics. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. In toxic relationships, this means understanding that while you can't control someone else's behavior, you absolutely can control how you respond to it. Breaking free from a toxic relationship is never easy, especially when it involves people you've been deeply connected to. But staying in that dynamic is far more damaging in the long run. The truth is, walking away isn't an act of weakness. It's one of the strongest and most loving things you can do for yourself. It's a statement that your peace, your growth, and your happiness matter. Instead of clinging to a cycle of conflict and exhaustion, you can choose to step back, lower the curtain on the drama, and walk toward a life of freedom and self-respect. As Seneca said, associate with people who are likely to improve you. The people you keep in your life should inspire and uplift you, not drain and diminish you. Take a closer look at the relationships in your life. Are there people who leave you feeling lighter, more fulfilled and valued? Or are there those who, after every interaction, make you feel smaller, less capable, or more burdened? If you're stuck in the latter, it's time to make a change. Toxic relationships thrive on your fear of stepping away, on the belief that your worth is tied to how much you endure. But the truth is, your worth is measured by how much you love yourself enough to let go of what no longer serves you. Life is too short to spend it sacrificing your peace on the altar of someone else's dysfunction. So what can you do? Start by acknowledging the problem. Reflect on how this relationship is affecting your well-being and whether it aligns with the life you want to build. Then, set boundaries. Clear, firm limits that protect your emotional space. Not everyone will respect them, but that's okay. Those who truly value you will adapt, and those who don't are showing you their true colors. Finally, give yourself permission to walk away if the relationship continues to harm you. This doesn't require drama or confrontation. Sometimes, the most powerful move is simply creating distance and focusing on your own growth. Letting go of toxic relationships is an act of self-care, not selfishness. It's a recognition that your energy is finite and should be spent on connections that bring joy, encouragement, and balance. As you step back, you'll find that the space left behind isn't empty. It's filled with the opportunity to reconnect with yourself and build healthier, more fulfilling relationships. Remember, as the Stoics teach, peace is found not in controlling others, but in mastering your own reactions and choices. You have the power to decide who belongs in your life and who doesn't. And here's a truth to hold on to, my friend. Courage isn't about enduring the unbearable. It's about knowing when to let go. Take a step back, reclaim your stage, and fill it with people who celebrate you for who you are, not who they want you to be. In the end, your life isn't meant to be a drama. It's meant to be a masterpiece of peace, growth, and fulfillment, crafted by you, for you. 9. When you feel invisible. Have you ever felt like a ghost drifting unnoticed among the people who are supposed to care about you the most? Perhaps it's with friends, family, or even a partner, but the feeling is unmistakable. That sense of invisibility, of being overlooked and unheard. You find yourself wondering, do I even matter to them? If you felt this way, know that you're not alone. It's a painful but clear signal that something in the relationship isn't right. The signs may start small, almost imperceptible, but they grow louder with time. The subtle brush-offs, the lack of genuine interest, and the dismissive responses add up until you're left questioning your place in their lives. One of the clearest signs of this dynamic is when indifference masquerades as busyness. Of course, everyone is busy, but when someone consistently dismisses your attempts to share your feelings, accomplishments, or struggles with a casual, "Oh, that's nice," or "We'll talk later," it reveals a deeper issue. Time, after all, is a choice. People who truly value you will find time, even in the midst of their busiest days. As Marcus Aurelius wisely said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This applies to relationships too. If they can't show care, it's not about being busy, it's about priorities. Another painful indicator is the absence of support when you need it most. True relationships are built on mutual care, where people step in for each other without waiting to be asked. If, instead of offering support, someone gives excuses or pulls away during your struggles, it's as though they're letting go of your hand when you need it most. Even worse is when the relationship becomes one-sided, where you're always the one giving, sacrificing, and listening while they remain indifferent or absent. Relationships are meant to be an exchange, not a performance where only one person carries the weight. Over time, this imbalance drains even the most generous hearts, leaving you exhausted and empty. Perhaps you've experienced the hollow reassurance of a "I understand" when sharing your feelings. But does it really feel like understanding if it's followed by shallow advice or dismissive criticism? When someone listens without truly hearing you, it's not connection, it's neglect. If you find yourself explaining the same things repeatedly, only to be met with indifference or superficial responses, it's a sign that your voice isn't being valued. And let's be honest, how long can you keep pouring your energy into a relationship that doesn't even acknowledge your presence? The Stoics teach us that we cannot control the actions or attitudes of others, but we do have control over who we allow into our lives. When you feel invisible in a relationship, it's not your responsibility to beg for attention or understanding. It's your opportunity to set boundaries. Seneca put it beautifully. Associate with people who are likely to improve you. If someone's behavior consistently diminishes your self-worth, it's time to reconsider their place in your life. Cutting ties doesn't mean harboring resentment. It means valuing yourself enough to prioritize your peace and emotional well-being. Leaving a toxic or unbalanced relationship can feel as though you're giving up, but it's actually an act of profound self-respect. Think of it like tending a garden. If you have a plant that consistently fails to grow despite your care, do you keep watering it, hoping it will someday thrive? Or do you accept that it's time to plant something new? Relationships, like plants, require reciprocity. They need nurturing from both sides to flourish. Continuing to pour your energy into a connection that doesn't reciprocate is like trying to fill a bucket with holes. No matter how much you give, it's never enough, and eventually you'll be left empty. It's also important to recognize that not all relationships are meant to last forever. Some connections serve as lessons, teaching us about ourselves, our boundaries, and what we value in others. Others, however, can anchor us to a place of stagnation, preventing us from moving forward and growing into our potential. Recognizing when a relationship has run its course isn't a failure, it's wisdom. It's an acknowledgement that your energy and time are precious and should be directed toward relationships that uplift and nourish you. Walking away from a relationship that no longer serves you doesn't mean you hate the person. It means you love yourself enough to choose peace. It's about accepting that not everyone will see your value, and that's okay. Your worth is not determined by someone else's ability to recognize it. As the Stoics remind us, true happiness comes from within, from living authentically and in alignment with your values. Don't let the fear of being alone keep you in a space where you're not truly seen. At the end of the day, life isn't about how many people surround you. It's about the quality of those connections. As Marcus Aurelius said, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Surround yourself with people who add to your life, who see and appreciate you for who you are, and who inspire you to grow. If you feel invisible in a relationship, it's a sign to step back, reevaluate, and, if necessary, move forward without that person. The courage to let go of what doesn't serve you is the first step toward living a life where you're truly valued, not just by others, but by yourself. Congratulations on making it to the end. This is your moment to take action. Comment "peace over chaos" if you're ready to create healthier boundaries and let go of what no longer serves you. Stay tuned. This is just the beginning of your Stoic journey. 10. The toxic family. Have you ever stopped to think that not everything labeled as family truly embodies what family should be? Society has sold us a comforting narrative since childhood, that family is always a refuge, a sanctuary where love and support are guaranteed. But is that really the case? For some, family is less of a haven and more of a weight, pressing down on their chest and stifling their sense of self. It's hard to see this clearly when the world whispers, "But they're family," or "Family always has your back." Yet, what happens when those ties leave you feeling drained, anxious, or lost? If every encounter feels like running an emotional marathon only to end up more depleted than before, it's time to reassess what family really means to you. The first red flag in toxic family dynamics is the exhaustion that comes after every interaction. This isn't the exhaustion of a long day spent laughing and connecting. It's the kind that leaves you emotionally bankrupt. Maybe the conversations are laced with constant criticism, judgment, or backhanded remarks. Does every gathering feel like stepping into an emotional battlefield? Family shouldn't feel like a place where your character and decisions are under relentless scrutiny. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, if you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your judgment of them. And it is in your power to wipe out that judgment now. Recognizing these dynamics is the first step toward reclaiming your peace. Then there's the guilt, the subtle and sometimes overt pressure to carry the emotional burdens of others. Perhaps you've become the family problem solver, the one who is always expected to fix every crisis, shoulder every blame, and cater to every need. It's exhausting, isn't it? No one can pour endlessly from an empty cup, and yet some family members seem to expect just that. This isn't love or support, it's emotional dependency, a pattern that demands your energy without offering anything in return. If this resonates with you, ask yourself, how often do you feel like you're rescuing others at the expense of your own well-being? As Epictetus wisely advised, "He who is not a good servant will not be a good master." You are not the emotional savior of your family, nor should you be. It's easy to feel trapped in these dynamics, tied down by nostalgia or the fear of letting go. After all, cutting ties with family feels final, almost taboo. You might worry about what others will think or fear that you're abandoning your loved ones. But here's the truth. Choosing to step away from toxic family members isn't abandonment. It's self-preservation. You're not burning bridges out of spite. You're building boundaries out of love for yourself. Setting limits doesn't mean you stop caring about them. It means you start caring about yourself. Consider this. If a plant in your garden isn't thriving despite all your effort, do you continue wasting water and time, or do you plant something new in its place? Relationships, even familial ones, are no different. What can you do to reclaim your peace? Start by identifying the behaviors that are harming you. Is it constant manipulation, where every no you say is met with guilt? Is it endless criticism disguised as concern? Or is it the sense that you're always walking on eggshells trying not to upset anyone? The Stoics teach us to focus on what we can control, our actions, our boundaries, our choices, and to let go of the rest. As Seneca said, associate with people who are likely to improve you. Family doesn't get an automatic pass to drain your energy or disrupt your peace. Boundaries are not acts of rebellion, they are acts of self-respect. Setting boundaries with toxic family members doesn't mean you have to become a fortress of cold indifference. It's about creating a gentle wall, a protective space where your emotional energy is preserved. Start small. Maybe it's limiting the time you spend with them or choosing to disengage from conversations that become toxic. When guilt or manipulation creeps in, remind yourself that saying no isn't selfish, it's necessary. Yes, some family members may react poorly, but that's a reflection of their inability to respect your limits, not your decision to enforce them. For some relationships, stepping back entirely might be the healthiest choice. Practicing emotional detachment isn't about shutting people out, it's about prioritizing your well-being. This might mean speaking less, engaging less, or even walking away from certain dynamics altogether. The Stoics often spoke of the power of letting go, not with bitterness, but with wisdom. As Marcus Aurelius advised, choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. Detaching yourself from toxic family members is a way of choosing peace over chaos, not out of anger, but out of a deep sense of self-care. It's important to acknowledge that not all family relationships are built to last. Some bonds teach us valuable lessons, but are not meant to be lifelong fixtures in our lives. Recognizing this is not a failure, it's growth. The relationships that truly matter are the ones that nurture and support you, the ones that celebrate who you are rather than diminishing your spirit. If being around certain family members feels more like a weight pulling you down than a force lifting you up, it's okay to loosen those ties. Your happiness and mental health should never be sacrificed on the altar of obligation or societal expectations. Are the people I call family helping me become the best version of myself, or are they holding me back? If the answer is the latter, it's time to take action. This isn't about resentment or anger. It's about choosing love for yourself. As the Stoics teach, peace is not something others can give you. It's something you cultivate within by aligning your actions with your values. The real family is not always the one you're born into. It's the one that sees you, values you, and helps you grow. True family liberates you. It doesn't imprison you. If you feel like you're losing yourself in a toxic family dynamic, it's time to step back and reclaim your essence. You don't owe anyone your peace, and cutting ties with toxicity isn't about erasing the past. It's about creating a future where you can thrive. Life is too short to spend it seeking validation from those who cannot give it. Surround yourself with people who see your worth and remind yourself daily, you are worthy of relationships that bring you peace. Thank you for spending your time with us today on Stoic in Your Life. Remember, recognizing the relationships that no longer serve you is not about bitterness. It's about choosing peace, growth, and a life aligned with your values. If this video resonated with you, don't forget to give it a like, share it with someone who might need to hear this message, and subscribe to the channel. Make sure to hit the notification bell so you won't miss our upcoming videos filled with wisdom to help you navigate life with clarity and strength. Until next time, take care and stay true to yourself.